Alright, so this is my tutorial to show you how I set up my tracks. So first of all, we have this template. Um, the template is just to make it easier for you to, on a weekly basis, just drag in songs that you've already made files for, which I could show you that at a different time, but basically this is just me planning out a set. So the first song is going to be You Are Life, so I'm going to go find You Are Life and see, these are all my songs that I've already set up, and I'm just going to drag this ALS file in. It's going to drag all the tracks in with it, and you'll see all these tracks here. First thing I'm going to do is just drag all the songs in. So we got You Are Life, and then we're going to do No Other Name. If I can find it. Hmm. Hmm. Well, that was strange. It couldn't find the files, so I had to go back and search for them, but I found them. Then we have a new arrangement of Jesus, What a Friend for Sinners. So I'm going to drag this into. And then So Will I think we're doing the live version. And then we have Living Hope. Yeah. So, yeah, we have all this. So the first thing I'm going to do is you see these little markers right here. I'm gonna paste all the songs towards those markers, and so I'm gonna cut. I'm just gonna hit copy or Command X, so it just cuts the song right there, and then I'm gonna go to my next marker, paste it there, so that when I hit my next marker, it'll play the song without me having to try to find the place that it's at. So then we got song number 3, Jesus What a Friend, and then So Will I, cut that, paste it at the end, and I don't know, oh, I do have a last marker. So I'm going to cut this. Again, I'm just hitting Command X and Command V for cut and paste. You just select it all. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move all of my click, guide, and tempo files. So I'm going to select all of that, hit Command X, and I'm going to paste it at the top where it says all clicks, guide, tempo. So these are the tracks I'm going to paste it on. And ultimately, this is just so that you can always see where you are in the song. And I'll explain that a little later, but I'm going to first delete these 3 tracks that were there, and then I'm going to keep doing that for all the other songs. So I think, yeah, sometimes if you make edits, it doesn't get all of it. So just make sure you cut all of it and then paste it all back, and then go to delete these tracks, and then yeah, just keep going. And there's no necessarily exact order that you have to do every time. I just like have my set way of doing it in this exact order every time. So it's just easier for my workflow. Yeah, so just to make sure you're tracking with me, I'm just selecting. So if you go to this first track here, let me switch the view real quick, so you can see it a little better. Let's see. Look at the default. Yeah. So I'll just select this first little cut track right here, and then I hit Shift, and I select the last track that I want, and it selects all of them. So just hit Command X, and then I have a shortcut to get me to the last and next marker, which is these little brackets, the left and right brackets next to P on the keyboard. So the left bracket goes back, and that just makes sure that I'm actually on the marker. So I'll just paste it there, and we have all of those there. And then I'll just keep doing the same. So yeah, so that goes first. Another important step to do is this is all dependent upon the way that your church or whatever setting you're in runs their tracks to front of house. So you'll see right now I have click, guide, and tempo, and then I have these, which I'll explain in a minute. But then I have my tracks line. Sometimes you'll mix it out to front of house, and you'll have perk, you'll have keys, you'll have vocals, or whatever that has. Basically, like, what the important thing is that you get all of these tracks to go out to all the right outputs. So the way it works for us now is we just take all of these. So I just switched views. So this is arrangement view, which is the way that you'll run it in. If I hit tab, it switches back and forth between arrangement view and session view. And this is just the easiest way to route all of these for me. So because I only have one tracks bus, I'll just select all of them that are in here and go to, I'll just I select the first one, hit Shift, select the last one, and then I go to right here where it says tracks. So say for instance you were just doing like perk and then keys and whatever, you would just select these first few, typically synth effects too, and then you just go to here, and then essentially there'd be another bus out that you would select, and you would just route it to there. So I'm just going to keep doing that for all of these songs. That's interesting. So this one has a lot. Also, some of these tracks I don't really use. So you could see, I think I left my click, guide, and tempo tracks in here. I'm just going to check real quick, make sure, yeah. Sorry, as I was saying, some of these I don't use all of the tracks that are in multi-tracks. Obviously, like, there's a lot of people playing on stage, so most of those instruments will be able to cover. So like, we obviously don't use the drum track. We don't use like acoustic tracks really. So like acoustic guitar, we don't use bass tracks, but you'll see that they're muted right here. So that's the mute button, so that turns it on, that turns it off. Sometimes just to save space, I'll just go ahead and delete the track. So I just select the track and then hit delete, and I'll do that for all the ones that are pretty much off. That's, I guess, if I just get bored. So yeah, so right now everything is functioning properly. So the way, basically you have everything routed out right. So that's a really important part. So from here on out, it's more of just how you kind of want to organize things. So the first thing I want to do is I want to relabel where it says song 1. So I'm just going to put your life. Sorry, I'm just going to make sure you know these key commands. So if you just select this and then you hit Command R for relabel, you'll type the song there and then the key, which I think is and then let's see. Yeah, I'll get to transposing later, and I'll show you how to do that. But basically, yeah, that's it. That's it for that. And then no other name. I'm just gonna do the same thing.
1, 2.
Let's see. And then Jesus, What a Friend for Sinners. I just realized I didn't. Oh, I did put the key. Jesus, What a Friend for Sinners. So will I. Then we have Living Hope. Okay, so one thing we need to check is to make sure, first of all, that the BPM is good. Usually this will be pretty obvious. Sometimes it's not. But basically, that's what this tempo track is here for. Give me just 1 second. This is gonna, the colors are gonna bother me. I think, yeah. Then, yeah. All right. Yeah. So you have to make sure the BPM is good. So basically, this tempo track is here to make sure that when you go from one song to the next, that you're playing at the right BPM. Basically, the way that you do that is you double click this tempo track and you make sure this little guy right here says master. Basically, what that's telling Ableton to do is to follow the tempo that's on that track. So it's following that tempo. If it says slave, that's not what you want. So make sure that says master. Sometimes people don't set them up right. So sometimes they're not mastered. That one is, but that's just something to keep in mind. Also, something else to keep in mind is that sometimes, let's say you have a song in 6. I think this song
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Let's go ahead and turn that down so you can hear me. So this song is in 6. What I'm going to do to make sure that Ableton reads it back in 6, and this is important in case you ever do any editing for your set afterwards, you'll see that if I try to cut a bar or something like that, it's not going to cut right. So,
1, 2, 1, 2.
Like, that's not a bar. So, what you have to make sure is that the grid is set in 6/8 instead of 4. So in the other songs, it's set in 4, so the grid being in 4 is okay. But for this song, you have to come up here and you see where my cursor is right now.
1.
You just have to right click and then insert time signature change and then change that to 6/8. So from there on, you'll be able to select a bar. There's also a cool shortcut that helps you see where, like, say you're trying to cut, I don't know, you're trying to cut only a little bit of a bar. If you're trying to zoom in or zoom out to get that, first of all, it's minus and then shift plus to zoom in and zoom out, which is really helpful. And then if you hit Command 1, it subdivides the grid. Command 1 keeps doing that. Command 2 unsubdivides it, if you will. That's just something I use actually quite a bit. So it's just important for me to use. But anyway, so I'll just continue. So a good thing to note is that if you change something to 6/8, the grid for the rest of the session is going to change to 6/8. So
1, 2.
Yeah, civilize in 4. So I'm going to have to go back and do insert time signature change, and then change it back to 4/4. And then Living Hope's in 4 as well. I'm pretty sure the key is good on this. I just gotta check. Yeah, we're good on that in D. Pretty sure this is in C. Yeah, we're good on that. And then, so Living Hope, I know, is originally an A.
2, 3.
Yeah, so this is an A, so I have to change it to A flat. So the way that I do this is I will just go in. Perk tracks are typically, like, it doesn't matter if they're in the key or not. So typically you don't need to change the key of those. But basically, I'm just going to double click on this track and then select all of these. So I just make sure you're following. I just hit the top one, held shift, and then selected the bottom one. Now they're all selected. And then the important thing you'll need to do is just, you see this transpose function over here. You'll just need to go down 1 for A flat.
1, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, so now we're in A flat. Also, something important to notice is make sure all of these are in warp. The way that I've set it up, they should already all be in warp. So that works really well, but also I prefer to keep mine in complex right there. If you see that, this drop down menu. So typically all my tracks are warped and in complex mode, just so I think that's always a lot better. So right now there would be nothing keeping us from just playing the set, but you would have to fire everything yourself. So, I mean, and that's not a hard thing to do, but a lot of times if you're the worship leader and you're having a drummer run tracks, it's not going to be the easiest thing for the drummer to, like, put down his sticks for a second and figure out how to fire the next song. So, the way that we kind of get around that is through building transitions and also through these little MIDI commands that I have set up. This stop and next section right here. So let's say we're going right into No Other Name. So the first thing I'm going to do is, you see all this space in between the songs. I'm going to take, I just said Command 2 a bunch of times. Going to take all this dead space out. So shortcut I'm going to use is Shift Command Delete. Basically what that does is it deletes in time. So the purpose of that is so that, say if you've made any changes later in the set, like, it basically snaps all of that to where you want it to be. So I'm just going to zoom in, make this transition a little bit tighter. Again, Shift Command Delete. And if you need any of these shortcuts, I could just send them to you. But
Ending.
So purpose is just trying to find where exactly you want the next song to start. So the way that I do this is I will go in and I'll see how the rest of the song kind of ends. And what I'll do is I'll just select these tracks right here before it ends, and then hit Command X. So that cuts all the tracks, to which you can later paste them back. The reason I do this is, like, say if the tracks were really long and somebody had, like, edited them down, like, you don't lose any of your editing when you do that. So let's say I want this transition to be fairly tight. I'll just start here. Again, I just selected Shift Command Delete and put it back in time, and then paste this back right here, and then I just listen to it.
Ending. 1, 2.
Now, ideally, I'm going to have a much tighter transition than that. So I just keep doing it until I feel like
it's good. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
I could have even a tighter transition than that. Yeah, and sometimes just the tiniest bit of room makes a big difference too. So.
Ending. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Also, sometimes I'll just cut this first bar of the count off if I don't think the band needs it and it works better for the transition. Which I don't think that's necessary here, but let's just cut just a little more space. Sorry, let's cut those tracks. And then I'm going to do 2 of these. And then I'm going to listen to it.
Ending. 1, 2.
You can tell there's a little bit of weirdness in the tracks when it switches over. That's because the tempo of the tracks is technically changing. So it's playing back the tracks that you had for You Are Life at a different tempo. So the way that you counteract that is I split them, and then I go into here and I select all of them, and then I take them out of warp and put them back in warp. Basically, it's asking you, would you like to keep the current clip's timing, which basically just keeps the original file's integrity instead of warping it to the new time signature. So I'm just going to hit yes for all of these. So now
1, 2.
There'll be a lot less
1,
weirdness
2,
in that transition.
3, 4.
Awesome. So we have that transition down. That's kind of how I do it. I'm not going to walk you through all of my transitions, but I will show you this feature called Stop and Next. Basically, it just uses MIDI to tell Ableton what to do in a live set. So this is a so in this set we are done with So Will I at the end of the message. So say like we finished with So Will I and you just honestly don't feel like hitting spacebar, which sometimes you just forget or sometimes you just don't want to. So what I'm going to do is I have this software called Bone MIDI Translator Pro, and it's a super cheap software. Basically, I just have all of these MIDI MIDI messages in BOEM, and that takes a little bit more explaining to set up, but in functionality, I'm just going to go to, let's see, that's song number 5. So if I just select this stop and go to song number 5, I just copy it, and then go to the end of song number 4, and paste it. This is an important part. If you see that it says clip deactivated. If you just hit 0 while selecting the clip, it activates the clip. So what should happen is it'll just stop and go to the next song, and it'll just put you there. It won't go. So that's really cool. There's also like a let's say for instance you end your set and you just want to go back to the beginning, so you have like 4 services or something, you can just put a stop and go to song number 1 marker at the end of your set, and it'll have you reset for the next service. So, but the important part of that is that my template is set up to where if you hit number 1 on your keyboard, it'll go to the first song. Number 2 will go to the second song, third song, fourth song, so on. So all of that is really important within the template. And then what's also important is to then, I can't believe I haven't done this till now, but go ahead and save your project. And I typically, I go under the sequences file, and I'll just put the date. So this is and this. Awesome. And then that should be pretty much everything. The only other thing to take into account is how you bus out your tracks. So when I say bussing out, I mean when you send them out of the computer. So whatever interface you're using to send them to front of house, basically you'll just make sure you want to have the audio output device selected. They'll typically, I just hit Command comma. That goes to my preferences. You hit audio, and then you go to audio output device. There'll be a third choice here. Make sure when you go to output configuration that you have selected all of these that you need to use. And then you just hit OK, and then what you should be able to do is you just hit audio to ext out, and then whatever numbers you need. So click is typically 1 for me, and then tracks are typically 3 and 4. If you have other channels that you need to fulfill, like, definitely that's your own thing, but that's just how we kind of do it. I hope this, oh yeah, also make sure your guide is sent to the right channel as well. I just missed that. But, yeah, I mean, I think that I pretty much covered everything, so I hope this helps.